There's nothing in the Genocide Convention that means that the genocide has to be, that the perpetrators of genocide have to be associated with a state. There's a very interesting debate about whether the crime requires a state-like entity to perpetrate it. And ISIS, to the extent that they controlled territory and acted with the attributes of a state, would certainly fulfill that criterion. What you may want to exclude, but people debate this, is whether you want to exclude racist attacks, violent racist attacks by individuals or groups that are, groups like a motorcycle gang or a mafia or something. And that's not so plausible when we're talking about genocide. But when we get to crimes against humanity, there are all kinds of terrible acts that may be perpetrated by gangsters, criminals of different kinds, and the question is whether we really want to include them. Terrorist groups that are not controlling territory and acting like a state. And there's an ongoing debate in international legal circles about just where we draw the line. Some people don't want to draw a line at all and want to prosecute any form of large-scale violence or other terrible acts committed even by isolated individuals. And others think that it should be confined to states and to state-like entities. But I don't think with the Yazidis and ISIS that there's any controversy or problem about that. As a result of a General Assembly resolution adopted a couple of years ago, I think largely out of frustration that they couldn't make progress in the United Nations Security Council dealing with Syria, a fact-finding or a commission was set up under the auspices of the General Assembly with the idea that it would gather evidence for future prosecutions. There have been a lot of other efforts over the years to do that, some informally by NGOs, by non-governmental organizations, and some by more official bodies like a War Crimes Commission that was set up during the Second World War. To date, they haven't really been very effective, because what happens is when you set up an international court, the prosecutor wants or needs to go and get the evidence herself or himself and can't rely on something that other people collected for them. Because of problems of admissibility, it will be attacked by the defense, and this remains a problem. I remember asking some people who were investigating Syria, they said, we're investigating the war crimes in Syria. And I said, well, are you gathering evidence both for the defense and for the prosecution? This is what's required by the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. And they scratched their heads and said, it's a good question, we hadn't thought about that. And what the consequence of that is that if you ever get to a prosecution, the defense will challenge whether that evidence should be allowed in. So it really hasn't worked to date. It's a nice idea, but I wonder if it's actually practical. It's logical that people do it because they're frustrated and they want to do something and they want to be seen to be doing something, but whether it will actually deliver results is difficult to say. I think part of it is that while a conflict is ongoing, it's very hard to do justice. Justice is when the conflict, you do it when the conflict's over, or when you can, it's very, very hard to make it work while wars are ongoing. And so we're frustrated while the war is going on because we think we'll use international justice as a tool. But the best we seem to be able to do is to wag our fingers and say, when the war is over, you're going to be punished for it. And I think some people do take that seriously because more and more we have international institutions capable of doing it. It's more and more plausible, even perhaps probable at some point, that people who commit atrocities during conflict will be brought to justice. And so what we can't measure are the people who are sort of dropping out of the, not doing things because they're afraid of the consequences later. We don't know how widespread that is. We recently had a case at the International Criminal Court where a leader was prosecuted for failing to investigate. And finally, the judges at the end said, well, but we have some evidence that he was investigating and participating. And they said, we can't reach the conclusion that he didn't do anything. And one of the things that shows us about it is that a lot of these, that behaviors may be changing. And it may be because these people are these warlords and military commanders are thinking about what might happen to them when the conflict's over. So that's all to the good.